Dennis Walden, Spec 4 or E4. I was in a multiple rocket launching unit.
Why did you join the service?
My grandfather had been in World War II, and my dad had been in during Vietnam. And just coming out of high school, I felt a sense of patriotism, and that's where I should be. When Desert Storm happened, when they announced that Desert Storm was going to happen, I was involuntarily extended. I was only in for 2 years, 4 months, I forget what it was, and ended up being there almost 3 years. Well, anyway, so I was what they call a short timer. I had already did my stint of service, and so when I was over in the desert and that stuff, I did a lot of questionable things, you know. I remember the battery commander was taking a shower one day, and the showers were in the middle of the wherever we had sat down, right? And I took his clothes, and so he had to walk back to his tent naked, and everybody was laughing and stuff. So for punishment, what they did is they would have me burn crap. So I did that quite often.
Another thing you wrote was gnats and burned
Yes.
and intention, something like that.
Yeah. One of the things I remember when I was over there too is that the gnats were all around, and flies were all around every wet part of your body, your mouth, your eyes, you know. It was very uncomfortable and that stuff. The burning. When we went over there, they had set the oil fields on fire, and it seemed like the whole time that we were traveling, we were heading into this black cloud, and we never seemed to reach it, but I can remember blowing my nose and looking down into it, and there was all this black stuff that was in there, and I only got a chance to wash my clothes a couple of times while I was over there. Water was precious. We had what was called potable water, which was drinkable water, but we didn't have what was called non-potable water, which was things you would use to, you know, wash your clothes with and wash your body with. So I remember twice washing my clothes, and it rained, and I got so upset because the oil, when it rained, the oil came down and it had gotten my clothes. The hubcaps is that when we were going into Kuwait City, it looked like a disaster area. I mean, everything was just, it was like it was heading into a garbage dump. They had been taking they'd been taking bombings for a long period of time. And there was just stuff blowing out all through the desert and vehicles all through the desert. Well, anyway, when we went into Kuwait City, we were weaving in and out on the roads because there was such huge holes in the roads, right, to where the bombs had hit. And I can remember taking small incoming fire from, you know, like an AK-47 or something like that, and how tense that I was. And one of those times I remember looking out into the desert, and there were these guys, and they were smoking a cigarette and taking off these wheels and hubcaps like nothing was going on. And I thought to myself, how are we ever going to defeat these people? They're in a constant state of war. You know, it didn't faze them at all. But here I am, I'm white-knuckled on the steering wheel, you know, because of this AK-47 firing. In the mop suit, when we went over there, because of the chemical weaponry and that stuff, I guess a couple chemical weapons had been exploded in the air, and they were worried about the effects it was going to have on us. And so they made us put on what they call a mop suit. And what it was is a real thick suit that had the end lining of it was charcoal. Well, I thought I was going to be smart because it's so hot in the desert, I didn't want to wear my BDUs or my battle dress uniform under it. So I stripped down into my underwear and put my mop suit on. And I remember when they gave the all clear and we could take our mop suit off, every one of the pores in my skin all over were black. from the charcoal where they absorbed into my skin. And then, yes, another time that we took small fire incoming was I drove a truck that had these rockets on there. Each rocket held 660 bomblets. Each one of them could penetrate 3 inches of steel, and the rocket itself had an 18-mile range. So what we do is go up to whatever the phase line or the battle line is and fire our rockets to what they call an azimuth, right? A direction in which they wanted them to go in for a target that they wanted to hit. Well, anyway, there were 2 parts to MLRS, or 13 Mike, and that was a truck that had all the pods on it, and then there was a launcher which launched the pods. So the truck would drop the pods, the launcher would pick the pods up and load them in and obviously go fire them. So at this particular time I was driving a truck with the pods on there, and I was the first one when we stopped at where we stopped at. I was the first one to have to download a set of pods, right? So I downloaded a set of pods, and in the midst of doing that, we'd start taking like a 60 cal type fire. I don't know what their equivalent to that is, but it was firing at us, and so we were going to retreat, right? And so I'm trying to load these pods up. The thing is that I've done this 1,000 times in the Army. Whenever you do something, whenever it's you're supposed to be trained at it, they do it over and over and over again. It's repetitive, like taking apart your weapon. It's you could do it in your sleep. And I thought I was really good at this. I had some of the fastest times at doing this, but it's different when there's bullets whizzing by you, you know? So I'm flinging these things all over the place. You could either blow them up with C4, which we did not have, or you could load them back up and take them with you. So I had to load them back up. And so I just remember what a nervous wreck that I was. And talking about that, I remember going over there, the Vietnam vets, and we had one Korean vet, I think, maybe Korean War vet, but they were all really nervous. They were, I don't want to say nervous, they were very tense. There was just this tension in the air that you could cut with a knife, and I thought I had it together. You know, I was young. I didn't think about anything. I hadn't been through Vietnam or nothing like that. I didn't know what to expect, but you know, I wasn't afraid for my life or anything like that. Too dumb to be, probably. But I remember we were in a convoy, and we'd traveled for, I want to tell you, 48 hours in the desert. And I had to drive those whole 48 hours. I didn't have anybody to switch off and on with me, and it was really scary because at nighttime we were under night vision, which means that instead of having tail lights or lights in the back, the tail lights were just this little dot that barely illuminated. And the desert, it was really dark, and if you've seen that light, you were probably 5-10 feet at the most, not even that, 5-8 feet away from the vehicle in front of you. Well, the convoy kept stopping and starting. And when they'd stop, sometimes they'd stop for long periods of time, and I would doze off to sleep, and I'd wake up and the lights would be gone. And if you got lost out there, you were in trouble. You know, you'd been left, you were lost. And so I'd get all over it. I'd jump down into the accelerator, and then I'd see the light. Well, when you see the light, you're on top of the vehicle, you know. And so anyway, we stopped, and I took the first guard. They had point guard, perimeter guard, and so I was so very tired. And the guard got over, and I went to my bed, or my bunk, and we'd been preaching at the guys to take off their clothes, like their shoes and their socks and stuff like that, so they didn't get foot rot or any type of rot. And I wanted to be a good example, so I took off my boots and all my stuff, got down my underwear, and I went to sleep. And it seemed like no sooner than I went to sleep, the tent wall started and this noise. It was like that from the percussion, and so I jumped up. I thought it was taking incoming, right? So I started yelling, incoming, incoming, and I ran out of the tent, only to find out that an M1 Abrams tank unit had come beside us and was firing for effect. And it was at that point that I realized that I looked out at all the Vietnam veterans and at the Korean veteran and thought that they had the tension and that I had it together. It was at that point that I realized that I was tense also, and that, you know, I was part of that tension also.
Yeah.